Chapter 2. Reaching the Trees. The walk to the trees took 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'd bet on it. My time sense always struck people, and even me, as uncanny. All my life, since the big hand, little hand mystery was explained to me, I've known what time it was with impressive accuracy. I could estimate the passage of, say, 3.5 minutes and hit it within a second or two. Waking in the middle of the night, I'd always be within a couple of minutes of knowing the time. At 2 hours and 15 minutes, I was suppressing the urge to run toward the wall of trees a click or two away. The land had started undulating, and the dead wood and rocks hidden in the grass were more common, so running was dangerous to my shins and toes. But I kept up a good pace. It was clear to me that I was getting sunburned. The signals from my skin were there. Feverish under the cool breeze, prickly under the soft warmth of the sun. That sunburn feeling was as clear, but not as urgent, as my thirst. Talking aloud had become an unaffordable comfort during the last hour. My mouth was really dry, and my brain was locked into a loop of an imaginary sound, the rip-hiss of a beer pop tab. I heard it in the breeze, in the rustling of the grass, the snapping of the twigs under my raw heels. "Stop it!" I croaked. I hit the shadows 50 meters before the trees. Going west, I thought, looking up from the ground for the first time since 10 minutes earlier, when I heard the unmistakable slither of a sizable snake near my feet. The trees were enormous, jutting out of the plain with the abruptness of a glacier face. The sun shined through the crowns, still blinding, though now dappling and green-tinted in alternating shafts of afternoon gold. Below the crowns, to my dazzled eyes, the forest seemed as dark and as dense as the plain had been bright and open. Stopping for the first time since the last toe stubbing, I felt a new emotion for me, one that had a faint fear aura around it. I felt overwhelmed. It's a big emotion, overwhelm. It was definitely bigger than thirst, sore feet, and sunburn altogether, because I stood there in the penumbra of the forest shadow, unaware of them all, in the thrall of being overwhelmed. It's a tidal wave emotion. Yet, even in that state, the writer's trick of, quote, a small part of his mind stood aside observing, was happening. A small part of my mind was fighting off another giggle attack, pinpointing a déjà vu sensation as being about the time, new engineering degree in prospect, that I had walked into the student center where hundreds of corporate recruiters waited like a sea of human Venus flytraps. "I'm definitely underqualified for this," was what I said then, and now. From a different small part of my mind came, perfectly to the point, "Find water, you dumb shit." This seemed to break the spell and reunite my parts into a purposeful creature. Shading my eyes and squinting, maybe even leaning forward, the classic pose, I scanned the forest. The trees on the edge were giants, and I could see past them to more giants, and while there was deep shade, there was clearly light in the forest. Green, gray, smoky light. In all the rush of observations and perceptions, all the fractured thoughts and bizarre turmoil that were on me at that moment, the light under those trees seemed like a bed with cotton sheets, like mother's milk, like soft music after loud noise. I leaned forward. I woke up with my face pushed into dirt and grass, and again the taste of blood in my mouth. How long? I thought, without the usual answer coming to me. Clearly I had fainted, passed out, collapsed. Attacked from behind? Well, nothing new actually hurt, beyond what was hurting before the blackout, except my face, so probably not. In fact, for a second there, the attacked from behind theory seemed okay, good even. Attacked means attacker, which means a person, which means I'm not alone. But no. Still sprawled in the grass, I felt the first stab of the acute aloneness that was to become my mate. But then thirst, fear of ants, snakes, and general discomfort took over again, and aloneness was not an issue for the moment. Up to my knees, then a crouch, No dizziness, although I did not feel entirely right. Thirst, I croaked. Shock, adrenaline, exhaustion, ant venom, exposure. I ran out of reasons a perfectly healthy 36-year-old electrical engineer should faint, but the list was somehow reassuring. The only residual fright came with the realization that I didn't have my usual lock on the correct time. I didn't know how long I had been unconscious. Reflexively, I looked at my watch wrist. My breath caught. Painted on the watch place was the back of my smartwatch, the concentric machined lines, the reversed lettering. I could read base metal on foil so thin as to be transparent, like tissue-thin metal skin. Staring intently at this residue of the prior reality made me feel woozy again, so I looked back at the trees, took a deep breath, and shook my head. "Water," I rasped. "All else is nothing compared to my need for water. No farting around with anything else until I find water." With self-leadership fully asserted, I stalked into the primal forest, weaving between trunks of such impressive size that I would have observed them in the awe due them from my tree-depleted time, except I resolutely ignored them, focusing my entire consciousness on covering ground toward a creek, or a spring, or a pond, or a slime-covered swamp, or a raging, mud-filled river. Water! Like a crazed bike messenger swerving between gridlock cars, like a skier skirting moguls, like a square dancer alamanding left with his whole left hand, I lurched around the huge trees, driving into the forest. Thick beds of fern as high as my waist in places wove through the trees like green rivers. Ferns need water, right? This gave me hope, and several times I dove into the ferns where they were highest and thickest, hoping for pools of water. The ground was moist, but no water. I'd get up and crash on. Evening came sneakily upon me as I went deeper, colors fading to grays. I was not ready for it. I was ready for water, and the failing light was deeply offensive to me, clearly interfering with my search. "Hugh," I sputtered through my cracking lips, warming up to some terrible oath against the darkness. However, another creature beat me to the complaining. It was a sound so arresting that thoughts of thirst, in fact, thoughts altogether, fled from my brain, replaced by sheer childhood nightmare caliber terror. Sound of an amplified moaning of an entirely too big beast with terrible depression, punctuated with terrified woman screeches, froze me in my tracks. It was a sound from some Disney movie, maybe the Dopplered cry of the giant as he fell away from his cloud kingdom, riding the severed beanstalk to the hard, hard ground. Either it was unbelievably loud or right in my ear, both completely unacceptable to my battered brain. I added my own moan wholeheartedly to the sound.